Okay, good morning. We are gathered on the territory of the signatories of Treaty 7, and I acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. My name is Shannon Phillips. I'm the NDP MLA for Lethbridge West. I'm also the finance critic for the official opposition. I'm joined today by NDP leader Rachel Notley, from whom you will hear in just a moment, and Calgary-Buffalo MLA and municipal affairs critic Joe Ceci. 2020 and 2021 were very difficult years for many Alberta families and businesses. Throughout the pandemic, Albertans saw their hours cut, people lost their jobs, or they had to close their businesses. Many people struggled to pay their rent or mortgage and to pay their bills, including their insurance payments. And it was particularly galling to see those insurance bills explode for vehicles that were barely being used at the time of the pandemic. At that time, we called on the UCP government to provide relief to drivers. After all, it is the provincial government that is responsible for your vehicle insurance. We called at that time for a 25% premium reduction. We called for policies to be extended. We've called for the rate cap that we had put in place to be reinstated. But the UCP refused at every step of the way. But at the same time, our neighbours in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, British Columbia, people as far afield as Quebec have all offered auto insurance rebates or lowered premiums during the pandemic. Albertans have reached out to us with stories of double-digit increases to their car insurance. People have been trying to decide which bills to pay. Now, others were considering parking their vehicle and taking the insurance off, even though they needed it to get to work. Some in Northeast Calgary did park their vehicle, only to have it written off during the hailstorm. And once again, no relief or even attention paid to this issue from the UCP government. So now we find ourselves in the midst of a cost of living crisis that is hammering household budgets. The price on everything is increasing: utilities, groceries, tuition, school fees. And most of these increases come as a direct result of harmful UCP policies and specific choices they have made to increase people's bills. The UCP has demonstrated over and over again, time and again, that they do not care about Alberta families. They do not care about helping people make ends meet. And when it comes time to make a choice in favor of large companies or their friends, they will make that choice at your expense. So now today, we are revealing that not only are they increasing costs for families, but they're willfully and deliberately hiding the lengths to which they have gone to do so. So with that, and for more details, I'll turn things over to Leader of the Opposition, Rachel Notley.
Thank you very much, Shannon, and thank you, Joe, for being here. And let me just say, it is with these Alberta families in mind that we come forward together with this troubling information today. For 107 years, Alberta's Superintendent of Insurance has published an annual report that includes data showing the amount insurance companies collected in premiums versus how much they paid out in claims. Simple but important information. In other words, that report for 107 years has shown a core measure of the profits that insurance companies have been enjoying in this province. But after 107 years, for some reason, the 2020 report was not released. So, our caucus filed a Freedom of Information request to obtain that report. In response, we were told by the government that they will not be publishing a report for 2020, nor will they be publishing a report for 2021. This is troubling for the reasons Shannon outlined, because 2020 was a very important year in the auto insurance industry and for Alberta drivers. The year prior to that, the UCP acted to remove the cap on insurance premium increases that we put in place when we were in government. As has been well documented, this was after the UCP was lobbied by the Premier's former Chief of Staff and campaign manager, Nick Coulsbergen. We saw immediate and dramatic rate increases from auto insurers. Many Albertans were hit with insurance hikes in the double digits, and some were as high as 30%. And many of these increases came in 2020 as the pandemic hit and Albertans were staying home. Alberta families were paying far more to insure their vehicles even when they were barely driving them, or in some cases, keeping them parked. Higher premiums and fewer claims presumably means insurance companies made a lot of money. And this report, which has come out every single year for more than a century, would show that one way or the other in detail. But the UCP has made a decision to hide this information from Albertans. It's worth noting that the Superintendent of Insurance is an employee of the Minister of Finance, and that the Insurance Act itself says the Minister may prepare and publish a report respecting the insurance undertaken by each licensed insurer during the previous year. I was just quoting from the Act there. So make no mistake, this is a decision that was taken by the Minister of Finance, I'm sure at the direction of his cabinet, his caucus, and of course the Premier. And now as a result of that, the UCP Finance Minister is choosing not to release this report right after deciding to hand massive profits to insurance companies while many Albertans are struggling just to keep up. For the UCP to hide this report is shameful, and it's clear that this direction is at the decision of the Minister himself. And it's yet another reason why Albertans cannot trust this UCP. Today we are making a thoroughly reasonable request that the UCP release the information that they are hiding, and that they release the information that has been routinely released to Albertans since 1912. Frankly, right now more than ever, we need to have a candid conversation about the enormous insurance costs that the UCP has forced onto Albertans since they removed the price protections that our NDP government put in place in order to protect Alberta families. But we can't have that conversation if the UCP hides the facts. So it is time for the UCP government to come clean with Albertans, to tell the truth about the windfall profits that they handed over to their friends and lobbyists within the insurance industry at the expense of Alberta families, Alberta businesses, and their budgets. Thank you, and we'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, we'll start with questions in person. Okay, seeing no questions in person, we'll move to the line. Just a reminder to use the raise hand function. Josh Aldrich, you're up first.
You read, Rachel Notley, you read out a little bit of the act that says the minister may decide to prepare the report. Is there anything within legislation actually requiring them to prepare and distribute the report, or is it just something that's always been done kind of in good standing and just to be transparent?
No, up till now, Albertans have been able to rely on a government that is committed internally to transparency, accountability, and following a tradition that is 107 years old. This UCP government is a different beast. And so yes, no, the Act does allow them to hide this information from Albertans. But I would argue that it is a choice for which they need to be held accountable. Albertans need to know this government made a clear decision in response to being lobbied by friends and insiders to raise a cap that was protecting Albertans, and now they are hiding the consequences of that decision from the very Albertans who see it hurting their bottom line each and every time they have to pay their insurance costs.
Follow-up, Josh?
Yeah, you make some general assumptions that feel pretty safe about insurance rates rising up. Do you have any indication exactly how much they've risen up, or an estimation on how much insurance rates have risen for individuals and for businesses?
Well, for the most part, we have to rely on, in some cases where it's reported, and also what we're hearing from individuals, but we have certainly seen reports of where the insurance has gone up at least 30%. And now the cap's been gone, or has been off for over 2 years, so I suspect that's even more the case. What we had in place was a cap that limited annual increases to 5%, and then an opportunity for them to make the case for why it had to go beyond that if it did. Now what's happening is they have free rein to raise it as much as they want, and no one is questioning it. So yes, having a more clear picture of how much it's gone up would definitely happen if this report was produced. We don't have that report, so we're relying on Albertans who are telling us that in many cases they literally have to stop driving their second car. They have to reduce what they can do in terms of participating in the economy. They can't travel around anymore because they can't afford to insure themselves the way they once were.
Any other questions, Josh?
No, that's all for me. Thank you.
Next up, we have Tom Vernon.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for taking my question. We've seen some reforms to the insurance regulations here in the province, including one that took effect this year on which insurer, whose insurance pays out collision claims. Would this type of report not make it easier to determine whether these changes are actually, impacting rates, or is there some other way that people can track how these changes have had an impact?
Well, that's a very, very good point, Tom. So the reality is that in addition to giving insurance companies the ability to have unfettered rate increases and impose those on Alberta families, the provincial government also stepped up to reduce, in a number of different ways, the amount that insurance companies are compelled to pay out. So between paying out less because of changes made by the UCP and charging Albertans more because of changes made by the UCP, I suspect what you're seeing, or will likely have seen, is massive increases in insurance company profits. Now, if the UCP wants to tell us we're wrong, we would suggest that what they do is they go back to a 107-year-old tradition and release this information clearly the way they have in the past. Because they've made this unprecedented decision not to do that, we are going to assume that it's because they are embarrassed by the size of the windfall that they have handed over to their friends, insiders, and lobbyists within that industry at the expense of Alberta families.
Follow-up, Tom?
When they were looking at these changes, they flirted with the idea of switching to a no-fault system in Alberta. They obviously did not go through with that, but at that time you mused about moving to a single payer. Is that something the NDP would consider doing? We're a year away from an election, so we're going to start hearing ideas on how you would lower premiums, and is a single payer system one you're looking at?
Well, I think at this point, for the most part, we felt we were able to successfully control insurance costs for consumers by putting our cap in place. And even though insurers, when we first did it, started threatening to leave the province, strangely, none of them did. That being said, I've asked my finance critic, Shannon Phillips, and some of our staff to meet with people in the industry as well as consumer groups and others interested across the province in this issue to look at the overall costs and some of the different ideas that we can put in place in order to support Alberta families when it comes to this important cost that they're faced with every year.
Any other questions there, Tom?
If you don't mind, if I can get you on another topic. We saw on Twitter today the Dean of the School of Medicine there in Calgary speaking about wastewater treatment or wastewater testing funding, and they're not sure if the funding is going to continue. They're still in conversations with that. Any thoughts on sort of the uncertainty around funding on this testing program?
Well, again, on the theme of the UCP government trying to hide information from Albertans on every single solitary front, that appears to be what we're looking at there. Listen, this government has bent over backwards to stop testing, stop disclosing information to Albertans, replace, hiding things, getting rid of transparency. One of the few indicators we have left, and one of the few indicators that's used across the country, is wastewater testing. So I think it would be incredibly irresponsible for this government to walk away from it, and we would urge them to not do that. They've already walked away from so much.
Okay, we'll do one more pass for questions either in person or on the line. And seeing none, that's all for today.
Thank you very much.
Tens of thousands of Albertans have already provided their idea for how we can build Alberta's future. You can too by going to albertasfuture.ca.